In the history of our planet, there have been 5 major periods of extinction. These have been caused when the Earth either gets too cold or too hot to sustain the species of plant, animal, and marine life that had evolved up to that point. The last major extinction took place 65 million years ago when a large asteroid struck the Earth just off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, sending so much dust up into the air that we experienced the equivalent of a nuclear winter, which killed off the plant life on which the very large species of dinosaurs depended, spelling their demise, but their demise left a little hole in the animal footprint of the Earth that allowed small mammals to flourish and eventually send up through evolution a naked ape that calls itself human civilization. The largest of our 5 periods of extinction, the one that happened 250 million years ago, called the Great Dying, wiped out 95% of plant and animal life and nearly ended life on our planet. The Great Dying was caused by volcanic activity in the middle of a massive coal reserve in Siberia. The coal was ignited by the volcanic activity and it burned for years, filling the atmosphere with carbon greenhouse gases, making the Earth hotter and hotter. It then took millions of years for all of that carbon out of the atmosphere to be sequestered into the polar ice caps and into dirt, into the Earth itself. Now, these are things that could happen again. Tectonic movement, volcanic activity, another giant asteroid could set another mass extinction in motion. And in spite of what sci-fi movies suggest, it's anything but certain that we could do anything to either prevent it or stop it. But we are now at the leading edge of what is being called the 6th period of mass extinction. Humans have always burned wood and oil and coal for light or to keep warm, but about 150 years ago, when we began an era of industrialization, the amount of carbon we were releasing from the Earth, digging up coal or pumping up oil and burning it, is putting enough carbon back into the atmosphere to escalate global warming. We are now pumping carbon out of the ground and into the air 10 times faster than that massive coal burn in Siberia that caused the Great Dying. Obviously, the rapid expanding use of coal-produced electricity and the burning of oil to operate our cars and heat our homes has rapidly increased the amount of carbon that we're releasing. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there's a huge amount of sequestered methane in the polar ice caps, of which I have a picture, on the ice shelf near Siberia that is about to be released in what scientists call a pulse, or literally a continental burp, that is expected to release as much carbon into the atmosphere as we have generated in the last 100 years in the industrial age. Apparently, now that we've warmed the Earth this much, this is going to happen. No matter what corrective measures we take right now, this pulse out of the Siberian Arctic is going to be released. Which is to say, no matter how dramatically we choose to address global climate change, it is going to get worse before it gets better. So, sure, say no to plastic straws and recycle your empty cans, but at the same time, you may as well get ready for larger and larger massive wildfires in the West, rising sea levels on the coast, the disappearance of some of my favorite islands in the Caribbean, and much more destructive hurricanes and tornadoes, and massive die-offs of thousands of species of plants and animals. And if you ever wanted to go scuba diving and see the coral reef, plan a trip 99% of the coral in the world will be dead before we are. These are not ifs or maybes. These are scientific facts. The question is whether we will be able to change course in time to curtail the rising sea levels and the rising temperatures sufficiently to save some part of our biodiversity, as much as possible, obviously. A crucial thing for us to understand is that we cannot continue in this direction telling ourselves that the effects will all come after we are gone. There is, in fact, another generation that we must consider. The now 16-year-old climate activist from Sweden, Greta Thunberg, is telling the world how things really are.
I know many of you don't want to listen to us. You say we are just children. We are only repeating the message of the United Climate Science. Many of you appear concerned that we are wasting valuable lesson time, but I assure you we will go back to school the moment you start listening to the science and give us a future. Is that really too much to ask? Now we probably don't even have a future anymore. Because that future was sold so that a small number of people could make unimaginable amounts of money. It was stolen from us every time you said that the sky was the limit and that you only live once. The UK's active current support of new exploitations of fossil fuels, like for example the UK shale gas fracking industry, the expansion of this North Sea oil the expansion of airports, as well as the planning permission for a brand new coal mine, is beyond absurd. Did you hear me? Yes. Is my English okay? Yes. Because I'm beginning to wonder.
The youngest member of Congress in American history, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, proposed the Green New Deal on her first day in Congress. It's not legislation. It's not even really a plan. It's a 14-page long resolution that you can read in less than 10 minutes that simply outlines the goals and presents only the broadest suggestions how we might achieve these goals. Though critics have called her crazy or stupid and have told all manner of lies about the resolution, saying that it will ban all air flight, it'll ban private automobiles, the production of beef and pork, none of this is even mentioned in the Green New Deal. These are all just lies. For much the same reason that I wanted you to hear Greta Thunberg's voice, I want you to hear the goals of the Green New Deal. And I wish I had a 20-something Latina that I could just pull up here to read it like Alexandria. But I'm going to just, if it's possible for you to imagine her while I read a portion of the Green New Deal. Yeah, stretch, Bob, stretch. It's called acting. Be it resolved that it is the sense of the House of Representatives that it is the duty of the federal government to create a Green New Deal, to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions through a fair and just transition for all communities and workers. B, to create millions of good, high-wage jobs and ensure prosperity and economic security for all of the people of the United States. C, to invest in the infrastructure and industry of the United States to sustainably meet the challenges of the 21st century. And D, to secure for all of the people of the United States for generations to come clean air and water, climate and community resiliency, healthy food, access to nature, sustainable environment, and to promote justice and equality by stopping current, preventing future, and repairing historic oppression of indigenous peoples, communities of color, migrant communities, deindustrialized communities, depopulated rural communities, the poor, low-income workers, women, the elderly, the unhoused, people with disabilities, and youth. Does that sound frightening to you? Does that sound radical to you? Doesn't it just make sense? Now, we've seen this crisis coming for decades, and any suggestion that we take radical steps to correct our course has been met with objections that the economic and standard of living impacts would just be too great, that it would just cost too much to make the changes necessary to save the planet. And you know, as absurd as it sounds, at a certain level it might be true, because if people won't do it, they won't do it. So the only reasonable way to address that very practical concern is to combine climate-saving changes with changes to our economic system so that the two can happen at the same time. It's not that it cannot be done. In fact, it has to be done. But the two factors of environment and economy will have to be transformed simultaneously. Critics say that the economic changes are socialist. I am so tired of them using that word as a scare word. I'm as tired of that as I was all the reasons given for why we couldn't desegregate our schools, or why homosexuals had to pretend to be straight. They were never good at it. And why women can't have equal pay. As Harry Truman said, though he says 20 years, you have to hear that as 80, Truman said, socialism is a scare word they have hurled at every advance the people have made in the last 20 years. Socialism is what they called public power. Socialism is what they called Social Security. Socialism is what they called farm price supports. Socialism is what they called bank deposit insurance. Socialism is what they called growth of free and independent labor organizations. Socialism is their name for almost anything that helps the people. Amen. It should be easy to see that given so many lies, so many misrepresentations, and so much childish name-calling, that the right is just afraid of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But even more, they are afraid of the powerful logic behind the necessary changes that are enumerated in the Green New Deal. But possibly, our more serious challenge is opposition from those that we like to think of as being our allies. And I want to be careful when criticizing legislators who have had decades of success under their belts, but both Senator Feinstein and Speaker Pelosi, who have a lot of legislative victories to their credit, but they have both tried to dismiss the Green New Deal, saying that it goes too far, that it is too ambitious, that it will never be passed. So they are telling us that they want to propose their own versions of a Green New Deal that will be dramatically scaled back so that it will be easier to pass. Now, I want you to hear me out on this, and I don't expect everyone here to agree with me. That's one of the great things about being in a liberal, unaffiliated church. Being right doesn't mean you have to agree with me. You get to hold your own opinions no matter what. But when you propose something big, something that would be really transformative to our economy, something that would make enough changes to actually help save the environment, something that would restore the middle class and give us some security, then that's something worth fighting for. When you propose something really big, that's worth pounding the pavement. That's worth marching. That's worth knocking on doors and donating and voting for. But the more you trim the proposal, the more you cut back on enthusiasm. When you get it down to changes that won't really save the planet and won't really create living wage jobs in a changed economy, then you'll get the people who come out and vote who always are willing to go and vote for the lesser of two evils. But it makes it so easy for idealists to give up and stay home. Again, I'm not trying to make anybody mad here. You have a right to disagree with me. But in 2016, we were told that things like tuition-free college and universal health care were just too much. that it was crazy to suggest that we could have it. So the DNC forced on us a safe choice that was better than the other choice, but it was still a choice that favored big banks, big pharma, big insurance companies, corporate interests, and the military-industrial complex. And so what was dubbed the safe choice lost. Pelosi and Feinstein are still saying again, even in the face of that failure, we want to hold the middle ground and stay safe. I'm not alone in believing that the middle of the road is for yellow stripes and dead armadillos, but it's no place for thinking voters. My position is this: aim high, because the future of the human race is at stake. Aim high, because aiming low has never, never, never worked. I'm asking you to think beyond identity politics. Yes, I was one of the happiest people in the world in November of 2008 when we elected our first black president. But folks, in spite of all of the class and the soaring speeches, I miss the Obama so much. But you know, he was not a progressive. You know that, don't you? He was not a liberal. He was a conservative Democrat at best, and possibly a corporate Democrat more realistically. And you're not going to have to do anything to persuade me that it is time for a woman president. I would love to see a woman of color to become president. Wouldn't it also be great to have an openly gay president? Shoot, you know me, I'd be excited about having the first Jewish president. But I think we've all got to move past identity politics. Now, you know that I'm on shaky ground when I use a sports illustration. I'm 62 years old and I've never seen a football game yet. But let me try this out. And don't correct me while I'm talking. Correct me later if I get this wrong. But if you think of the issues that we see in the Green New Deal that can save both our planet and our economy, of retrofitting all existing buildings and creating building codes so that all new buildings are energy efficient and carbon neutral. We invest heavily in mass transit so that we can replace a lot of air travel with train travel. Build a power grid that can make renewables capable of replacing the burning of oil, gas, and coal for power generation. And if we institute new farming techniques that don't require us to till the soil so much, and so that we produce fewer greenhouse gases. And you see these issues like a football, and you want to carry the football over the goal line. Now, if you're a coach and you want to win the game, do you really care if one of your black players or one of your white players is the one to carry the ball over the goal line? Do you really care if it's a freshman or a senior that carries the ball over the goal line? Do you really care if the person that carries the ball is gay or straight? Or for that matter, whether it's a man or a woman? I know there's regulations about this, but just play along with me. If you're a sane coach, you want the ball in the end zone. Is that the right term? Right? Okay, good. Now, right now, we've got, thank you. Thank you for bearing with me. Right now, we've got 20 plus players. And I don't know, you what, put 9 or 11? How many do you put on the field? 11. So we've got extra players. By and large, I'm excited by the field of candidates that we have to choose from. And I don't want to dismiss any of them just out of hand. I want the ball over the goal line. I really don't care who carries it. I want the ball over the goal line this time. Now, some of these players have already said they don't want to carry that ball. Bye. Get out of the way. I like all of them, but you know, I'm honestly not married to any of them. Is Tulsi Gabbard single? Does anybody know? She's single. I could be married to one of them, but we need to stay focused. It doesn't matter who carries the ball. We've just got to win this time. They say that in the primaries we fall in love, and in the general election we fall in line. I don't like the sound of it, but like most of you, I've done it. I've had to hold my nose in the voting booth for 40 years. You almost never get to vote for the perfect candidate. But as Ralph Nader has famously said, if you always vote for the lesser of two evils, you will always have evil, and you will always have less. Men and women, we and our ancestors over the past century have lit the fuse on the sixth mass extinction of life. This is no time for half measures. This is no time for compromise or premature surrender. How's my English? Do you understand me? Sometimes I wonder.
A great number of politicians have told me that panic never leads to anything good. And I agree. To panic unless you have to is a terrible idea. But when your house is on fire and you want to keep your house from burning to the ground, then that does require some level of panic. We are in the midst of the sixth mass extinction, and the extinction rate is up to 10,000 times faster than what is considered normal, with up to 200 species becoming extinct every single day. Erosion of fertile topsoil, deforestation of our great forests, toxic air pollution, loss of insects and wildlife, the acidification of our oceans. These are all disastrous trends being accelerated by a way of life that we, here in our financially fortunate part of the world, see as our right to simply carry on.
Thank you for watching our videos. We are entirely dependent on the donations of our listeners and members. We hope that you find this content to be important enough to help us to keep offering these videos to the public at no charge by becoming a regular contributor. Please click on the donate button on our website at www.spfccc.org. Thank you for your support of progressive religious programming.